Hello and welcome to Diaspora Network, the program where we celebrate Nigerians making remarkable strides around the world. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. On today's program, we turn our focus to a side of migration that is often overlooked: mental health and the emotional toll of starting over. Our guest is Olamide Jasanya, a communications strategist and social impact leader whose work is helping migrants in the United Kingdom navigate cultural change and mental well-being. But before we hear from him, here's a look at what's making headlines across the global Nigerian community.
Nigerian-born physician and pharmaceutical executive Dr. Henrietta Uku has been listed in the prestigious Marquis Who's Who for her global impact and leadership. She's Executive Vice President and Chief Regulatory Officer at Novava Incorporated, where she leads global regulatory strategy and works with major agencies. With over 30 years in the industry, she played a key role in securing emergency use authorization for the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine worldwide. She previously held senior roles at Otsuka Pharmaceutical Companies, US, and Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Uku is also recognized for advancing HIV and AIDS treatment and has received multiple honors, including Pharma Voice 100 and the Topra Inspirational Leadership Award. She trained at the University of Jos and completed further medical training in the US. Her recognition reflects the growing global influence of Nigerian professionals in healthcare. Nigerian American Ifeanyi Ruth Umunna has been elected co-president of the Harvard Law School Student Government for 2026 to 2027. She previously earned an MPhil in criminology at the University of Cambridge as a Gates Cambridge Scholar focusing on international criminal justice. A summa cum laude graduate of American University, she founded Zentry, a non-profit supporting justice-involved individuals. She also received the Chase Fellowship from Harvard Law School, funding her 2026 internship with the UK Public Defender Service. With experience in public service, law and advocacy, Umunna is an emerging leader to watch. Another trailblazing Nigerian marking global impact through her work is Wendy Okolo, an aerospace engineer at NASA Ames Research Center. She made history as the first black woman to earn a PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas at Arlington. Wendy works as a research engineer in the Intelligence Systems Division and contributes to advanced aviation and space technologies. She has also promoted inclusion in STEM as Special Emphasis Programs Manager for Women at Ames. Born in Nigeria and raised partly in Lagos, her journey continues to inspire young scientists, especially women and underrepresented groups.
For many, relocating abroad is seen as the ultimate story of progress and opportunity, but behind the celebratory pictures are often quieter, tougher realities and the immense pressure to keep going even when things feel overwhelming. Our special report this week examines this hidden emotional cost of migration and why it's crucial to build support systems that help our diaspora not just survive, but truly succeed. Loneliness, seasonal depression, visa related anxiety, expectations from home, and career stagnation, despite years of odd end qualifications. These are some of the unspoken realities of migration, the parts of the story that rarely make it into conversations back home, but which thousands of Nigerians living abroad navigate every day. According to the Mental Health Foundation, factors such as discrimination, language barriers, financial insecurity, and social exclusion place migrants at significantly higher risk of anxiety, depression, and psychological distress. Yet for many Nigerians and other migrants shaped by cultures that prize resilience, ambition, and endurance, asking for help can still feel like admitting failure. A growing number of initiatives like the Pan-African Mental Health Research Network, Black Minds Matter, and Mentally Aware Nigeria Initiative are trying to fill that gap, creating spaces where migrants are not only visible, but genuinely supported. Also making an impact is the Thrive Together initiative. Through programs delivered across cities and universities in the UK, it creates intentional spaces where migrants can openly engage with issues of mental well-being, identity, and personal growth. Our guest this week, Olamide Jasanya, is the founder of Thrive Together Initiative, a platform dedicated to supporting migrants in the United Kingdom through conversations around mental health, social inclusion, identity, and career growth. Through programs like Power to Thrive, he's creating safe spaces where migrants can share their stories, find support, and build the confidence to move forward. Born in Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, and raised in Lagos, Olamide Jasanya grew up in a home that gave him the freedom to explore his creativity. He studied theatre arts at Obafemi Awolowo University, and although his early training was rooted in performance, he soon discovered that storytelling could take many forms.
I grew up with parents who were pretty much very liberal, allowed you to express yourself. And my father, being an artist himself, was very open to the idea of, okay, yeah, you go. I wanted it to be a lawyer, but if you wanted to be an actor, that's okay. Right. So it allowed me that. And I'm so grateful to him for the opportunity because that really did give me wings to explore the creative side of me. I, of course, worked with the legends in the industry, if I may, and was really groomed, but I realized that I wasn't going to end up in front of the cameras, but I knew there was much more that I could do with my background in theater. So I fell in love at some point with cute shoes, cute jackets and suits and bags. So I loved the professional life and then veered into public relations and marketing, where I did spend the bulk of my professional career. Of course, thankfully, is that it's also about telling stories because you're telling stories for brands and for corporate individuals. So I did excel there. I worked with about three different marketing and PR agencies. I also worked as a corporate communications manager for an insurance company before moving into the UK. I think for me, the reason I moved to the UK was because having practiced public relations and marketing for about well over 9 years, I realized that there's so much more to be done, especially from the communication standpoint. And when COVID happened, it became obvious to everybody that brands need to do much more, right? To give back. It's not so much about selling, selling, selling. At some point, there is need for brands to take a pause and see how they can do it differently. And it was at that point, COVID did it for me. I realized that, it was a thing, and I wanted to explore the concept of CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, to see how brands can leverage that to, further solidify their stance as, brands to be loved. So I opted to go study for an MSc in CSR and sustainability. I did that at the London Metropolitan University, and yeah, I've been practicing so far since. It's been an exciting, very stressful journey nonetheless, but quite exciting, I must say, altogether.
Now pursuing an MBA at the University of East London, Olamide is the founder of Thrive Together, an initiative which supports others far away from home. Before that, he had already begun building a life around social impact. In Nigeria, he founded Project Give, an initiative that provided support to more than 1,000 children across 15 charity homes in Lagos in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what was your own experience when you first arrived in the UK?
Without a doubt, harsh reality is part of the mix. It wasn't honestly a mix of excitement and without a harsh reality. It was quite to be frank, a very rich dose of excitement and a bigger dose of struggle. On the surface, everything always looked promising, new opportunities, especially before you leave. You've done all your permutations. If I earn this amount of money, if I convert it, I'll be living fairly decently. You've done all those things in your mind, and you're like, okay, yeah, I should be fine. I should be good to go. But on the surface, like I said, everything always looks promising before you go. You're already seeing the opportunities, the environment. You're thinking, okay, if I strategize this way and that way. But beneath all of that, there's always this uncertainty. And I did have my fair share of it. I did experience quite a bit of it. Moments of isolation, trying to understand how things work, from the job market to social culture. There's a lot that you really have to navigate. And there's also the part of the pressure that you put on yourself because you don't want to fail. Especially when you migrate in an adult age where your mates are already getting married and having kids, and then you are just starting all over again. You don't want to fail, especially when you've left so much behind, and your colleagues back in Nigeria are telling you, do you really want to do this? I mean, you're in the manager level, all of that. But that comes with the struggle itself. But for me, one of the biggest challenges was the mental adjustment. You go from being confident and established in your home country to almost starting from zero again. Learning how to attend interview, learning how to speak at interview, learning how to put your CVs together. These are things you've done way years ago. And that can be very humbling. And at times it sure can be overwhelming as well. So yeah, I did have my fair share and I'm still dealing with it. It's a journey really, because and frankly speaking, you spent well over 20, 30 years in your home country. You don't expect to pick up having spent just 5 years in a new country. So it's a reality you have to, embrace, and a journey you have to appreciate as you go along.
And you founded the Thrive Together initiative after your own experiences. Was there a moment where you realized that this was the kind of space you wanted to create for others?
Well, it wasn't just one moment, really. It was a combination of several, from my experience to my friends' experience to stories I've heard. It was a build-up. For I personally, I do remember a period in my life when I realized that so many migrants around me were silently struggling, and just like I was, and then that triggered something for me. Everyone always looked fine on the outside. The Instagram never tells the real stories, but when you hear different conversations, you hear stories of frustration, of confusion, even emotional outbursts, people just crying at the train station, something as simple as you missed the bus and the people just cry. But you realize in that moment when they're crying, it's not about the missed bus. It's about the many other things that have happened in the weeks before, the months before, the unfortunate news you've received having applied for a job you thought you were perfect for, and many other things like that, airports that ultimately culminate to an emotional burnout. And I thought, there isn't anyone creating spaces where we can talk about these things honestly, so I thought that was a turning point for me. I realized that awareness wasn't enough. There's need for us to have structured intentionality around conversations like this, building community where we can all come together and share these struggles that we all face, and to see how we can navigate, because it's our reality, quite honestly, and whether or not we like it, we have to embrace the journey to see where it leads us. Absolutely.
And just speaking about Nigerians in general, I guess, why do you think mental health is still such a difficult conversation for many people to have?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said earlier, you live the better part of your life so far in a community that doesn't appreciate conversations around mental health. You won't just be able to, boldly talk about it here, whether or not the structures are available to help you have such conversations. It takes a lot of reorientation. And again, like you said, absolutely, a lot of it is cultural. In many communities from where we came from, mental health is not something we were raised to openly discuss. When when you tell people I'm stressed, you tell people I've got depression, they'll be like, oh, please have some good eba and sweet soup, and sleep, or go to a party. Things like that are how we, make conversations around mental health. But it's like I said, it's about mindset. It's about mindset. It's about understanding that yes, you are strong, but there are days when you are not strong enough. It doesn't mean you're not strong. It just means on those days you're just not strong enough. And of course, there's also the stigma. People worry about being judged or being misunderstood, described as lazy, incompetent, or just being dramatic. Things like that are the reasons that people don't openly share their struggles about mental health. And for migrants specifically, there's an added layer of pressure. You've come abroad for a better life. So admitting that you're struggling can make you feel like a failure. So you get to pick up, you wipe your tears and face the camera and have conversations with your family back home, when in fact you are dealing with a lot. But the truth is, acknowledging that this struggle exists helps people back home to appreciate you and maybe put less pressure on you as well. When you share with them that I'm going through stuff, this is not a good period. Can I have some minutes? It helps them if you do have a good family, that is, it helps them understand that it is a process and they really have to, empathize with you and allow you live truly and through the process as well. It helps them, come to realize that it's not all beds of roses as well. And of course, it makes such conversation normal and easy to have as well.
When we return from a quick break, we continue our conversation with Olamide Jasanya as he shares more on the emotional realities of relocation and why migrants deserve more than just survival. Please stay with us. Olamide Jasanya has also written and directed short films centered on migration and its impact on families, and is currently the voice behind the Lost in Transit podcast, where he shares honest and unfiltered conversations about migration, identity, and growth. He urges others not to isolate themselves, not to judge their journey too harshly, and not to feel ashamed if things do not immediately go to plan.
And I guess moving to a new country can be quite hard to find community, and you might be tempted to stay in your own little bubble. But what role does community play in protecting mental well-being? And also talk to us about what the Thrive Together initiative does and who can access it, basically.
Community is everything. Quite honestly, you cannot do without it. And in the words of I forget the name of this person, but it says fishes swim, but people, right? Community is key. You need people. Community gives you a sense of belonging, and that alone can be incredibly powerful. When you're a part of a supportive community, you realize that you're not alone in your experiences. You're able to share, you're able to learn and grow together. It also helps to create accountability and encouragement. So people will remind you of your potential, even when you cannot see it yourself. And I say this first time because I had this experience where I'm like, what am I doing? I am applying for roles that are way in quotes beneath me. I'm not even getting it. But in those periods, you need people who remind you of what you really are worth, what you really can do. So community is absolutely, absolutely everything. And that's one of the core principles behind what we do at Thrive Together, building spaces where people can come together, feel seen, feel heard, and feel supported. Essentially, we're designed for migrants who just want more than survival. And that's what happens typically when you're in an environment that doesn't exactly fit you. You stop wanting to thrive. You just want to survive. You just want to wake up every day and get by and just repeat the cycle, which of course ultimately kills whatever dream you've had as a child, whatever potential you have as well. And we don't want that to be. So for us, we create experiences, we design programs and events that focus on mental well-being, because quite honestly, it doesn't matter how much aspiration you have rather, everything starts from your mental well-being. If you're not strong enough for it, if you're not confident enough for it, you can never do it. You will never aspire to something bigger than what you are confident to achieve.
And can you share a moment or a story from one of your events that has really stayed with you and shown the impact of what you do?
There's quite a lot of it, quite a lot of it. But one that I always remember, and even because putting together the last two, I must say, because we had London and Manchester back to back was hectic, But one thing that always kept me going was the feedback we've had from previous editions. And to answer your question, one moment that really, really stayed with me was after, I think it was a Newcastle edition, when someone came to me and said to me, for the first time since I moved here, I don't feel alone. Such powerful words, helped me realize that this was beyond me. This is the right thing and at the right time and for the right people. And sitting in the audience every time, there's this level of vulnerability that is expressed. People sharing their fears, their worries, their anxieties, things that they typically write in their diaries or even are not even bold enough to tell or speak to anyone about. Creating an environment for which they can share these things always makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. And it always reminds me that beyond the planning and logistics, what I am really doing, or what we are really doing at Thrive Together, is creating connections that help people thrive.
And if someone just moved to a new environment, a new space, a new country, and they find that they are struggling, what advice would you give to them?
Hmm, I would say give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. And that's one thing I didn't let because I like to think of myself as an overachiever. I'm always like, get it done, get it done. I didn't give myself enough grace. Many nights that I cried needless tears because really, if I knew that I was going to get to this point where I'm just adjusting, I bet I should have just, put pen to paper and maybe, journal instead of crying. But of course, I'm not sad about crying. I'm not ashamed to cry. I did cry. But thinking about it now, those tears were needless because I wasn't giving myself grace. I needed to realize that, it's a big transition and it's okay for everything not to have been figured out immediately. It is absolutely fine. So give yourself grace. That is one thing I'm going to say. The second is do not isolate yourself. Do not isolate yourself. You have to find a community. You have to find people. You have to find spaces where you can connect and share. And of course, finally, remember that the journey is valid. You have made it already, so there is no going back. You're already here. So you might as well just understand that this journey you have made is valid and you've done it at the right time.
Yeah, and just to pick up on what you said there, we do find that, you know, people get to the stage that they end up going back home. It's not their first choice, but they do end up going back home. And I think it's an important conversation to have because a lot of people don't see that as an option, but it is an option, isn't it? Getting to the point where you realize that you tried something, but it hasn't really worked out.
Absolutely, absolutely. You should never close the door to that opportunity, or that option rather. It is an option. It is home eventually, right? Whatever you've made here is always going to be your second home, right? So there's always a first home. And like we always say in Nigeria, there is rice at home. There's enough love back home. So if everything has happened, you've given it your best shot, you've done all that you need to do, and everything looks otherwise, by all means, pick your bags up, go back to the love that you were once experiencing and pick up from where you stopped. The good thing is that you would always be better off. Always be better off. And I don't say that to discredit Nigeria, but the fact that you've been exposed to a new culture, new people, and just the mere fact that you've survived a day, 2 days, a week, a month, or a year in a new man's land, you have had to navigate and build new structures. You would have grown. I assure you, you would have grown. And those things that you've learned will always give you an advantage when you return back home or return elsewhere. So you're always better off anyway. And of course, if you are like me, you came to study, you're going back with an innate certificate. So that also gives an advantage, So you always have to understand how to restructure, re-strategize, and pick up from where you stop. I assure you, it is never, ever, ever a sad reality if anyone has to go back home.
And I also want to mention that before you moved, you did run Project Give. Talk to us about that.
Unfortunately, we had to put it on hold. That wasn't because I left, because prior to leaving, I had built a structure that was sustainable. But of course, because of the structure of the Project Give, I'll talk about it briefly. So it was essentially, we created an app and a website where people could, donate, anonymously or however to charitable initiatives that we carried out. So before we thought to pend it, we had reached almost 20 homes with, gift items donated by people who just randomly got on our website or downloaded our app and just started to donate, but that was before the new economic reality where people could actually easily give. But we realized over time, people started withdrawing, people started giving little to nothing, and it wasn't sustainable and it's very understandable. People really want to give. And I must say, Nigerians are really generous people. Nigerians are the best people in the world. They were giving in thousands, and we were really, amassing enough money to go, shop for these kids in charity organizations and, motherless babies and stuff. So we did quite a bit, for which I am very grateful to everyone who was part of it as a donor, as a volunteer. We did quite a bit, a lot, in fact. But of course, when the economy changed, people weren't giving as much, and because of our model of organization, model of business, we relied heavily on donations. So we couldn't sustain that anymore. So we had to put it on hold. Hopefully, we can pick it up again and see how we can continue. But absolutely, that has always been the core of me, really, giving back, doing much more than within my physical environment. And I must say, the experience setting up, building, and creating a structure around Project Give did shape my understanding of leadership, of service. It taught me real life impact starts with empathy and action. And of course, that is what has propelled me to start all over again with Thrive Together, to see how I can do much more for the migrant community, for the Black migrant community in the UK. So the vision has always been the same. It's to create meaningful change in people's lives, irrespective of where I find myself.
And looking ahead, what do you hope Thrive Together becomes in the next few years?
Well, thank you for that. I see Thrive Together initiative becoming a leading platform for migrant empowerment, not just in the UK, actually, but globally. We want to expand our programs, the array of our programs, to reach more communities, to create even more structured support systems, from events to partnerships, digital platforms. Currently, we're working on a project where we're housing all the helpful tips, helpful resources that migrants can leverage when they move into the UK, from mental health to shelter to getting jobs, preparing for their CV and empowerment. So we're looking to curate such opportunities where if someone newly moves into the UK, they know where to go for everything. So that's going to come up in our website very soon. And we're also looking to, we've told ourselves, yes, this past year we have done serious programs. We might as well just let go. So we are designing a new program where people can come together, have fun, bond, communicate, socialize, and that's starting in the summer of 2026. So we're working aggressively towards that, and making it a very exciting opportunity for people to bond and talk about, yes, mental health, but also have fun, party, enjoy. And that's some of the things we're working towards in the coming years. But ultimately, the goal is change narrative, is to ensure that migrants are not just seen as people that are constantly chasing opportunity, but as individuals who are supported, who are empowered, and who are positioned to truly thrive. And that's what we are about at Thrive Together initiative.
Olamide Jasanya, thank you so much for joining us on Diaspora Network.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's a brilliant thing that you do to celebrate the voice of people in diaspora, because oftentimes we feel forgotten. We feel like, oh, I miss home. But programs like this, initiatives like yours, helps us to connect back home, tell the story of our triumph and our challenges as well. People can realize that it is not all sunshine, here in the UK or anywhere else. It's a sunshine. It's a lot of sunshine, but those bits and pieces of dark, gloomy days and times. But of course, we celebrate it nonetheless, because of course we're humans. What is life without bits and pieces of everything? So yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Diaspora Network. To watch this and previous episodes celebrating Nigerians around the world, visit channelcv.com or our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Tenyola Oyetayo. Thanks for watching.